This passage delves into a significant period in Paiute history, reflecting on the arrival of the first white settlers in Nevada, as remembered and recounted by Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins. The narrative unveils the profound impact of these encounters on the Paiute people, with memories of the early white settlers evoking both fear and anticipation. Particularly poignant is the Paiutes' historical memory of a red-haired tribe known for cannibalistic practices, which contributed to their initial fear of the white settlers who arrived with the large wagon trains heading to California in the late 1840s. One of the most striking accounts includes the Paiutes' interaction with the ill-fated Donner Party, a group of settlers who resorted to cannibalism to survive a harsh winter. This tragic event only reinforced the Paiutes' anxieties about the newcomers. Winnemucca recounts her grandfather's profound disappointment when he, as chief of the Paiute Nation, eagerly approached the settlers, hoping for a warm welcome from his long-looked-for white brothers. Yet his gestures of peace were rebuffed, and the mistrust from both sides deepened. His response was one of sorrow, as he continued to follow them, hoping to bridge the divide. The passage also provides insight into Paiute oral tradition, referencing a creation story that highlights a shared origin between white and dark-skinned people. This narrative of interconnectedness is juxtaposed with the distrust and fear that ultimately characterize the Paiutes' interactions with settlers, framing a story of unity lost amid the challenges of cultural collision. Winnemucca's words offer a window into the layered emotional landscape of the Paiute people during this transformative period. Her narrative is a call for empathy, understanding, and the enduring struggle for justice for her people. This passage reveals a profound myth of origin and reconciliation within Paiute culture. The story, as told by Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins, describes a time when the dark-skinned and light-skinned siblings of a once harmonious family fell into discord. Their father, grieved by their relentless quarrels, urged them to reflect on their actions, emphasizing the kindness and abundance he had provided for them. Yet, seeing no change in their hearts, he chose to separate them, sending the light-skinned children across a vast ocean. This act of separation was intended not as a punishment, but as a path to peace, with the hope that someday the descendants of each lineage might reunite and heal the wounds caused by their ancestral discord. The narrative expresses the Paiute belief in kinship between themselves and the white settlers, viewing them as descendants of their long-separated siblings. Winnemucca's grandfather held tightly to this conviction, eager to welcome the white brothers as family who had finally returned. His commitment to peace is clear as he instructs his people to show kindness and compassion to these newcomers, even if his own efforts went unreciprocated. His words resonate with forgiveness and the hope for unity, standing as a testament to his enduring belief in reconciliation despite the divisions between their peoples. In this way, the story serves as both a cultural parable and a poignant commentary on the impact of colonization, framing the encounters between the Paiutes and white settlers within a narrative of familial estrangement and the desire for harmony. In this passage, Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins recounts the early encounters between the Paiute people and the first waves of white settlers arriving in Nevada. Despite never having seen a white person before, her people, led by her grandfather, greeted these newcomers with curiosity and a sense of kinship. Her grandfather, the Paiute chief, eagerly welcomed Captain Johnson and his party, who stayed near Humboldt Lake. As a token of friendship, the settlers gifted him a bright white tin plate, which he treasured immensely. Winnemucca describes the joy her grandfather felt for the gift, adorning it like a prized possession. This plate became a symbol of connection and was celebrated by the Paiute people, who admired it with great fascination. As more settlers arrived, the Paiute community buzzed with anticipation and curiosity, particularly when they saw two black men in red shirts. Mistaking their brightly colored attire for something mystical, the Paiutes humorously interpreted these figures as a man in a blazing fire. Later, they encountered Captain John C. Fremont, who developed a friendship with her grandfather and gave him the name Captain Truckee, after whom the Truckee River was subsequently named. Truckee became a meaningful word among the Paiutes, symbolizing a gesture of acceptance and mutual respect. The passage captures a time of open-hearted reception from the Paiute people, despite the mystery and confusion surrounding these new encounters. It emphasizes the deep admiration Winnemucca's people held for small gestures of kindness and the lasting impact of these early exchanges. Through these interactions, the Paiutes saw the promise of friendship and alliance, reflected in simple, treasured objects and the bonds formed with early explorers. In this passage, Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins recalls a sweet memory from her childhood when her mother introduced her to her newborn sister. Her mother gently coaxed young Sarah by asking if she'd like something else that she could love and play with, a little sister. Sarah eagerly agreed, hoping for a sibling smaller and more playful than her older sister, Mary, who often left her to play with older girls. When the baby suddenly cried, however, it startled Sarah, leading her mother to comfort her and reassure her that this new baby was indeed her little sister. Around this time, Sarah's grandfather, Captain Truckee, was in California, where he fought alongside Captain Fremont in the Mexican-American War. Upon his return, Captain Truckee and his fellow Paiutes brought stories of California's beauty and the marvels they encountered. Their ability to speak some English, a new and foreign language to their people, filled Truckee with pride. The group also brought back guns, symbols of their journey and newfound experiences, which added a layer of wonder and intrigue for their community. This memory captures a mix of innocence, cultural pride, and the unfolding transformations within the Paiute community as they began to encounter and interact with the world beyond their own. Through Sarah's eyes, we see a family and community adapting with openness and curiosity to new experiences, even as they navigate the bittersweet changes brought by contact with the outside world. Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins recalls her grandfather, Captain Truckee, sharing stories with the Paiute people, particularly expressing his admiration for the goody gun that he and his companions brought back from California. With a lighthearted repetition of goody gun, goody gun, heap shoot, he demonstrated his fascination with the weaponry they had acquired. He also brought back soldiers' clothing adorned with brass buttons, which amazed the Paiutes, symbolizing the allure and novelty of this foreign world. At this point, the Paiutes remained peaceful and even affectionate toward the white settlers, hopeful that more would arrive and build upon this connection. Captain Truckee believed deeply in this bond and soon decided to return to California, entrusting his son, Sarah's father, with the role of chief. This marked a pivotal moment, as her father took on the responsibility of guiding the Paiute tribe. Later that same fall, as more settlers arrived, the community began to experience the full impact of these white brothers among them. This passage captures the sense of curiosity, warmth, and openness that characterized the Paiutes' initial relationships with the settlers, underscoring their genuine hope for a harmonious coexistence. Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins recounts a significant chapter in Paiute history, describing how settlers, stranded by impassable mountains, spent the winter with the Paiutes along the Carson River, now the site of Carson City. Contrary to stereotypes of blood-seeking Native Americans, Sarah highlights the generosity and hospitality her people extended to the settlers. The Paiutes shared their limited food resources freely, without demanding payment or imposing any conditions, countering any perception of hostility or selfishness. Winnemucca stresses that her people offered this help willingly, embracing the stranded settlers as white brothers. However, the following spring brought troubling news. Other tribes reported violent encounters with settlers, describing how some of these white brothers were killing Native people indiscriminately. This unsettling news spread fear through the Paiute community, prompting Sarah's father to lead his people to the mountains to gather provisions, anticipating a potential threat in the coming winter. This account reveals the Paiutes' initial openness to friendship with the settlers, underscored by an innocence that was eventually overshadowed by caution as they became aware of escalating violence elsewhere. Through her story, Winnemucca illuminates the complexity and humanity of her people, who acted with compassion despite facing the uncertainties brought by colonization. Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins recounts the deep fear instilled in Paiute children as tales spread of white settlers killing, and in some cases, eating indigenous people. Mothers warned their children, fueling a sense of anxiety at even the sight of dust rising in the distance, which the children would imagine to be approaching settlers. In response to these fears, the Paiutes retreated into the mountains, seeking safety. During the fall, her father directed the tribe to the Humboldt River for fishing, and the women gathered wild seeds. Using round stones, they ground the seeds between rocks, storing the harvest in covered pits that resembled wigwams. This careful preparation for winter was overshadowed by a sudden alarm one morning when news spread that white settlers were nearby. Panic set in, and everyone fled quickly, leaving Sarah's mother struggling with her two young daughters. This moment, etched into Sarah's memory, underscores the ever-present tension and fear that the Paiutes experienced as they navigated this new and unsettling presence of settlers in their homeland. In this heart-wrenching passage, Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins shares an intense memory of fear and vulnerability from her childhood. As her mother carried her younger sister and tried to coax Sarah to run, sheer terror rendered Sarah immobile. Her aunt, equally frightened, suggested a desperate measure: to bury the girls to hide them from the white settlers, whom they feared would kill and eat them. Acting quickly, the women buried Sarah and her cousin, covering their faces with sagebrush to shield them from the sun, and left them hidden and silent. The day stretched endlessly as the young girls lay buried, terrified and holding their breaths, fearing each moment they might be discovered. Sarah's memory is filled with a profound dread as she questioned if her pleas to her father and to God were heard, longing for safety and for the day to end. Her account vividly captures the overwhelming sense of helplessness and isolation she felt, reflecting the profound impact these terrifying encounters had on the Paiute people, especially the children. This experience etched a lasting memory of fear into Sarah's young heart, one that contrasted starkly with the hope and trust her grandfather once held for peaceful relations with the settlers. In this passage, Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins captures the intense emotions she felt while buried alive in fear of approaching settlers. Her helplessness and despair reach a peak as she calls out, wondering if her family will return for her. Finally, she hears faint whispers and footsteps drawing near, her heart racing with both hope and dread. When her mother's familiar voice calls out, she experiences an overwhelming wave of relief and gratitude as she and her cousin are unearthed by their parents. Safe once more in her family's embrace, Sarah reflects somberly on this experience. She likens this momentary burial to the ultimate peace she longs for in her final rest, where no fear or expectation will disturb her, just a sweet, enduring peace that feels unattainable in her life's turmoil. This wish for lasting peace reflects her weariness from the hardships endured as the chieftain's weary daughter. Yet, even as the Paiutes hid in the mountains, the settlers, whom her grandfather once lovingly called our white brothers, discovered and destroyed the Paiutes' winter supplies, setting their provisions ablaze. This devastation underscored the stark betrayal of trust that had marked the Paiutes' experiences with the settlers, deeply affecting Sarah and her.
People. In this passage, Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins recounts a devastating incident in which the Paiutes' carefully prepared winter provisions were burned by settlers, leaving her people facing a harsh winter with dwindling resources. Her father, along with a few men, tried to salvage some supplies during the night, but by the time they arrived, everything was already destroyed. These settlers, equipped with weapons that the Paiutes likened to awful thunder and lightning, brought destruction wherever they went, leaving the Paiutes fearful and uncertain. Tragically, this group of settlers also met their own demise, unable to cross the mountains as winter set in. Winnemucca reflects on how her people, though capable of helping, refrained from doing so out of fear. She notes that this group of settlers ultimately starved in the mountains, trapped by deep snow. With the coming spring, Sarah's father gathered the tribe, forewarning them of a great emigration in the approaching summer. He spoke of a powerful dream that he wished to share, instructing his people to meet him at the sink of Carson River within 10 days. This dream, seen as both a warning and a vision, added an air of gravity to the already tense atmosphere.
Reflecting the growing uncertainty and apprehension the Paiutes felt about the steady influx of settlers encroaching on their lands. In this passage, Sarah Winnemucca Hopkins vividly recalls a gathering of the Paiute people at the sink of the Carson River, summoned by her father following his prophetic dream. As her family and tribe journeyed toward the meeting place, a group of men approached on horseback, singing a beautiful song in honor of her father. Their arrival was greeted with joy, and the encampment buzzed with excitement. Men, women, and children all gathered, laughter and songs filling the air as the community prepared for a joyous celebration. Her father encouraged the people to be merry for 5 days, a customary period for the Paiutes to reflect and resolve important matters. In this time of communal bonding, they danced, played games, and engaged in sports such as rabbit hunting, fishing, and football. The women joined in the festivities, free from daily responsibilities, creating a scene of collective happiness and unity. This moment exemplifies the Paiutes' cultural traditions, rooted in harmony, celebration, and mutual support, as they navigated both the joys and challenges of their way of life. My people were so happy during the first 5 days. The women ran races, and the men ran races on foot and on horses. My father got up very early one morning and told his people the time had come, that we could no longer be happy as of old, as the white people we called our brothers had brought great trouble and sorrow among us already. He went on and said, "These white people must be a great nation, as they have houses that move. It is wonderful to see them move along. I fear we will suffer greatly by their coming to our country. They come for no good to us, although my father said they were our brothers, but they do not seem to think that we are like them. What do you all think about it? Maybe I am wrong. My dear children, there is something telling me that I am not wrong, because I am sure they have minds like us and think as we do. And I know that they were doing wrong when they set fire to our winter supplies. They surely knew it was our food." 1716, and this was the first wrong done to us by our white brothers. Now comes the end of our merrymaking. Then my father told his people his fearful dream, as he called it. He said, "I dreamt the same thing 3 nights, the very same. I saw the greatest immigration that has yet been through our country. I looked north and south and east and west, and saw nothing but dust, and I heard a great weeping. I saw women crying, and I also saw my men shot down by the white people. They were killing my people with something that made a great noise, like thunder and lightning. And I saw the blood streaming from the mouths of my men that lay all around me. I saw it as if it was real. Oh, my dear children, you may all think it is only a dream. Nevertheless, I feel that it will come to pass, and to avoid bloodshed we must all go to the mountains during the summer, or till my father comes back from California, and he will then tell us what to do. Let us keep away from the immigrant roads and stay in the mountains all summer. There are to be a great many pine nuts this summer, and we can lay up great supplies for the coming winter, and if the immigrants don't come too early, we could take a run down and fish for a month and lay up dried fish. I know we can dry a great many in a month, and young men can go into the valleys on hunting excursions and kill as many rabbits as they can. And that way we can live in the mountains all summer and all winter too." So ended my father's dream. During that day, one could see old women getting together,